The afternoon sun rested gently over the busy park, giving everything a warm and welcoming glow. Families sat on the grass, children played on the swings, and the place felt calm in a way that made people forget the worries of their week. No one expected anything unusual to happen that day. It was supposed to be just another quiet afternoon. But fate had a very different plan, and it started with something small. A little girl and a tiny dog wandering toward the center of the park. The little girl, no older than 8, had a quiet and gentle appearance. Her steps were small, and she walked with a soft confidence, as if she knew exactly where she was going. Beside her trotted a small, fluffy dog-white round, so adorable that nearly every person who saw it felt their face light up. Its tail wagged like a little flag in the wind, and its paws tapped happily on the pavement. People smiled as the pair passed. Children pointed excitedly. A few even tugged on their parents' hands, urging them to look. The dog looked like the kind that belonged in kids' storybooks, the kind you would never expect to cause any trouble. And that was exactly why no one paid too much attention. The girl didn't say much. She kept her gaze focused around the park, her eyes quietly scanning the area as if she was searching for something. But because she was so young, no one questioned her calm, observant behavior. To everyone else, she just looked like a child enjoying her day. The dog didn't behave exactly like normal dogs, though. Most dogs in parks run toward food, kids, or toys. This dog did none of that. Instead, it walked in smooth circles around certain benches, sniffed near trash bins, and paused every so often, as if it were thinking. But because it did it all with such a cute, innocent expression, people simply laughed it off. A couple sitting on a blanket watched the dog and giggled. "Look how serious he is," the woman said. "He thinks he's on some mission." Her partner agreed with a chuckle. "Maybe he's looking for snacks." They had no idea how close they were to the truth, but for the wrong reasons. The girl followed the dog closely, not grabbing or pulling its leash, but letting it take the lead. She moved slowly, matching its pace, and stayed just a few steps behind. The way she watched the dog was unusual. She wasn't watching for fear of losing it, but more like she was waiting for something specific to happen. At one point, the dog wandered toward a group of teenagers sitting on the grass. They were laughing loudly, tossing chips into each other's mouths, and barely noticed the tiny dog until it stood next to one of their bags. The youngest teen reached out to pet it, grinning widely. "Oh wow, what a cute dog. Hey little guy." Before he could touch the dog, it moved away calmly, as if petting wasn't important. The teenagers laughed at its odd behavior. "Guess he's shy?" one of them joked. But the girl knew the dog wasn't shy. It simply wasn't there for attention. She quietly walked past them, offering a polite smile. The teens didn't think twice about it. To them, she was just a child walking her adorable pet. Nearby, park security guard was leaning against a lamppost, sipping from a bottle of water as he observed the crowd. When the dog approached him, his face brightened. "Well, hey there, buddy," he said in a friendly tone. He crouched down and reached to pat the dog's head. This time, the dog allowed it. Its tail wagged lightly, but its eyes stayed focused on the ground near the guard's feet. When it finished sniffing, it walked away. The guard chuckled. "Cute little thing," he said to the girl. She nodded politely. "He likes to explore. He's trained too?" The guard laughed softly, assuming she meant basic tricks. "Looks like he's good at it. Keep an eye on him, all right?" "I always do," she replied. Something in the way she said it might have sounded strange if he had paid closer attention, but he didn't. His mind was already drifting back to his usual routine. He had no idea how important her words truly were. The dog continued moving through the park. Every step it took seemed purposeful. It wasn't wandering the way random pets do, it was checking things, observing, smelling, but everyone around remained unaware. A mother pushing a stroller paused to admire the dog. Whispering to her toddler, "Look at the fluffy puppy. So cute." The toddler clapped in delight. The girl gave the mother a small smile but kept following her dog, not stopping even for a moment. The dog sniffed around the base of a slide, then circled a trash bin twice. The girl watched closely. Her expression stayed calm, but her eyes sharpened whenever the dog slowed down. Still, nothing seemed wrong to the people around her. No one noticed the dog avoiding the usual distractions: food smells, children's laughter, other pets. It wasn't interested in any of them. A man tossing a ball for his large brown dog noticed the fluffy one nearby and called out, "Want to play too?" His big dog ran excitedly toward the smaller one, tail wagging hard. But before it could get too close, the small dog stepped aside and sat down quietly, completely uninterested in playing. The large dog tilted its head in confusion. "Huh," the man said. "Funny little guy," shrugged, and continued tossing the ball. All the while, the girl stayed close, her hands held together in front of her, her posture calm and steady. She walked with the careful confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. If anyone had been paying closer attention, they might have noticed her eyes darting frequently toward one area of the park, a set of benches under a large tree. People were gathered there casually, chatting, reading, or minding their own business. But something about that area kept pulling her focus. Her dog seemed to think so too. It trotted toward the benches, slowing down as it got closer. Its tail no longer wagged. Its ears perked up. The dog sniffed the air in short, quick breaths. Then it lowered its head to the ground. The girl felt her heartbeat pick up slightly. She took a deep breath, but kept her face calm. The dog circled one bench, then another. It paused near a trash bin, sniffed once, then continued on. People around didn't notice anything unusual. A man sitting with headphones on bobbed his head to his music. A woman flipped through a magazine. A pair of kids chased each other around the tree. Everything looked normal, but the girl knew better than to trust. How things looked, the dog moved toward a backpack lying under one of the benches. It wasn't a brightly colored school bag or a neatly placed picnic bag. It was plain, dark, a little worn out, and it didn't seem to belong to anyone nearby. She watched the dog's steps, slow, careful, intentional. The dog reached the backpack and sniffed once, then twice. Then it sat. A cold rush went through the girl's chest, but she didn't panic. She had seen this before. She knew exactly what it meant. She stood there, her hands slightly trembling, though her face stayed still, her gaze fixed on her dog. The park was still full of laughter and chatter, everyone unaware that something important had just happened. To them, it was still just an adorable dog. Just a sweet little puppy wandering around. But the girl knew the truth. Her dog wasn't doing cute tricks. It had just given a signal she had been taught never to ignore. People around her continued enjoying their peaceful afternoon, not realizing that everything had quietly changed, and the girl took one silent breath, ready for whatever would come next. The moment the small dog sat down in front of the backpack, the girl felt the world around her shift. Nothing looked different on the outside. Children were still laughing, parents were still chatting, and the warm breeze still brushed through the trees, but she knew that everything had quietly changed. The dog's calm, still posture told her more than words ever could. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't an accident. It was a sign. She stood completely still, almost afraid to move too quickly. The dog didn't look at her, but she knew it didn't have to. This was its job, and it was doing exactly what it had been trained to do. Her small hands closed into gentle fists as she felt her heartbeat speed up. She wasn't scared for herself. She was scared for everyone around her who had no idea what was happening. Emily, sitting near the benches, didn't even notice the dog. The father was busy trying to open a juice box for his young son, who was giggling loudly. A woman nearby scrolled on her phone without lifting her head. A jogger slowed down to stretch, completely unaware of how close he was to the bag the dog was staring at. The girl took a quiet step backward, hoping to give the dog space. She didn't want anyone to panic, but she knew she couldn't stay silent. Not when her dog had made that signal, but before she approached anyone, she watched a moment longer. She needed to be absolutely certain. The dog's posture remained firm, body still, ears slightly forward, head lowered. Then its tail slowly stopped moving. That was the final confirmation. She took a deep breath. Nearby, a couple sat on the grass eating sandwiches. The woman noticed the girl's face and frowned softly. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked. The girl nodded quickly, but didn't slow down. She didn't want to draw attention until she spoke to the right person. She knew exactly who she needed to find. Her eyes scanned the area until she spotted the park security guard from earlier. He was standing near the path, talking casually with an older man who seemed to be telling a long story. The guard smiled politely, not really listening, just being friendly. The girl walked straight toward him, her steps small but determined. As she moved, she kept glancing back to make sure the dog hadn't changed its position. It hadn't. It stayed locked in place, focused on the backpack like nothing else existed. When she reached the guard, she gently tugged on the edge of his sleeve. He looked down and gave her a friendly smile. "Hey there, kiddo. Everything all right?" She swallowed hard before speaking. "I need to tell you something important," she said in a soft but steady voice. The guard raised an eyebrow. "Sure, what's up?" She pointed toward the benches. "My dog. He's trained, and he just found something." The guard blinked, confused. "Found something?" he repeated. "Like what? A lost toy?" She shook her head. "No, it's serious. He follows special training, and the way he's sitting means you need to move everyone back." The guard straightened a little, not sure whether she was joking or playing some kind of game. "What kind of training?" The girl took a deep breath and reached into the small pouch at her side. She pulled out a laminated card. It wasn't fancy, but it was official enough to catch the guard's attention. His relaxed expression slowly faded as he read it. "Hold on," he whispered. "It's real," she said quietly. "He's not just a normal dog. Please, you have to listen." The guard looked from the card to the girl's face, then toward where the dog sat, unmoving by the bench. "You're telling me he's a working dog?" he asked, his voice much lower now. She nodded. "Yes. I'm helping watch him today because my mother is nearby. But he wouldn't sit like that unless something's wrong." The guard glanced again at the dog. Something about the animal's stillness suddenly didn't look cute anymore. A working dog wasn't supposed to behave like a pet. And now that he thought about it, the dog had acted a little unusual earlier. He cleared his throat. "Okay, stay here," he said gently. "I'm going to take a look." But the girl shook her head quickly. "Don't get too close," she whispered. "Please." Her voice trembled just slightly, and that was enough to make the guard pause. He nodded slowly. "All right, I won't." Instead, he took a few careful steps forward and stopped at a safe distance. From there, he could see the dog's posture clearly. That wasn't the way normal dogs sat. It wasn't relaxed. It wasn't playful. It was precise. A small chill ran through him. The older man he'd been talking to earlier walked over with a confused look. "Something going on?" he asked. The guard held up a hand. "Please step back for now," he said gently. "Why?" "It's just a little dog." "It's not just a little dog," the guard replied. This caught the man off guard. "What do you mean?" Before the guard could answer, the girl stepped forward slightly and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "He's trained to find dangerous things," she said, "and he just gave a signal. You should move everyone away from that bench." The old man blinked in confusion. "Trained? What kind of trained?" The guard didn't answer directly. Instead, he suddenly switched on the radio clipped to his shoulder. His voice was calm but firmer now. "Control, I need another unit at the north benches. Possible hazard check." The girl watched him closely, relieved that he was taking her seriously. She stayed where she was, just like she had been taught. The dog didn't move at all. The guard took a step back and looked around at the park visitors. His calm voice carried just enough authority to get attention without causing alarm. "Folks, we need everyone to step away from the benches for a moment," he said. "Just move toward the open area. Everything's okay. We just want to check something." People reacted with mild confusion, but no panic. Some stood up. Others slowly gathered their things. A few kids whined, complaining that they had just sat down. One woman laughed. "Is this about that dog?" she asked. A man replied, "Probably someone lost something." No one understood the seriousness yet, and the girl was grateful for that. Panic wouldn't help anyone. The guard nodded toward the girl. "Stay with me," he said quietly. She nodded back. "I will." More people moved away from the benches. A mother carried her baby, and a teenager dragged his backpack with a sigh. Slowly, the area around the dog cleared. Still, the dog didn't move an inch. The girl's eyes softened as she looked at her companion. She knew he was doing his job perfectly, but she also knew it wasn't easy for him to sit still for so long. His training was strong, but he was still just a small dog at heart. When the path was mostly clear, another security officer arrived, jogging lightly toward them. "What's happening?" he asked. The first guard pointed toward the dog. "She says he's trained." And he gave some kind of signal. The second officer frowned. "Signal for what?" The girl stepped forward slightly. "He's a detection dog," she said quietly. "And he found something near that backpack." The officer's face changed in an instant. He looked from her to the dog, then at the bag. "You're sure?" he asked. The girl nodded slowly. "He never sits like that unless it's important." The officer exhaled sharply and spoke into his radio. "Control, we need immediate assistance from the response team. Keep people calm." As he radioed in the message, the girl watched him with a mix of relief and tension. Things were moving now. Adults were taking action. But the heavy feeling in her chest wouldn't go away. She wasn't scared for herself. She was scared because she knew. What could happen if they didn't act fast enough? The first guard placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing coming to me," he told her. She stared at the dog again. "I just listened to him," she replied softly. People continued to move farther back, still unaware that anything serious might be happening. Some even looked bored. A boy asked loudly, "Why can't we sit there?" "It's just a dog." His mother shook her head. "Let's not question it. Maybe it's an emergency drill." The girl lowered her eyes for a moment. She wished it was only a drill. The dog suddenly shifted very slightly, just enough for her to notice. Its ears perked up and then settled again. Her breath caught. That tiny shift meant it had smelled something again. The guard noticed her expression. "What does that mean?" he whispered. She swallowed. "It means he's still sure." The officer took another step back. Around them, the park was still mostly calm. People chatted quietly. Children kicked a ball around. A woman unpacked snacks for her young daughter. Everyone acted like life was completely normal, but the girl felt the weight of the moment pressing on her shoulders. She didn't want anyone to be hurt. She didn't want to imagine the worst. Her eyes stayed on the dog, the one friend she trusted completely. The breeze rustled through the leaves above them. The dog didn't react at all. The girl let out a slow breath. Everything depended on what happened next, and she knew that the smallest decision could change everything. The park had grown quieter around the benches now that people had been moved to the open field. Most didn't know why they were being asked to step back, and they accepted the change without much worry. It still looked like a peaceful afternoon to them. But for the girl, nothing about the moment felt calm. Every second felt heavy, stretched out, and filled with tension. She kept her eyes locked on the dog, who remained completely still in front of the backpack. The tiny animal didn't shake, didn't fidget, didn't look around. It just stayed focused. The girl knew how hard that could be for such a small dog, and she felt both proud and anxious at the same time. She wanted to run over, pick him up, and comfort him, but she couldn't. Not now. Not when he was working. The two security officers stood a safe distance away, whispering into their radios, trying to keep their voices calm. They didn't want to scare anyone. The girl could hear bits and pieces of their conversation. Possible alert, keep people clear. Waiting for response team, the older man from earlier stood farther back now, his hand resting on a walking stick. He still looked confused, but not dismissive anymore. He kept glancing between the girl and the unmoving dog. Every now and then he shook his head as if trying to understand how a small animal could change the mood of an entire place. a group of teenagers, had stopped tossing their frisbee and were standing off to the side, whispering things to each other. "Why is everyone being told to move?" one of them asked. "Maybe something spilled?" another said. A third shrugged. "Looks like they're overreacting," but the girl could feel their curiosity increasing. She hoped they wouldn't wander closer. Thankfully, a guard walked by and gently waved them farther back. The girl took a small step closer to the officers. "How long until the team comes?" she asked quietly. "One's already on the way," the first guard said. "Shouldn't be long." She nodded and looked down at her shoes, rubbing her fingers together nervously. "Hey," the guard added gently. "You're doing great." "Really?" She didn't answer. She didn't feel great. She felt responsible. The air felt warm, but she shivered a little. The officers noticed, but they didn't say anything more. They knew she had a lot on her mind. A soft bark cut through the quiet. Her head snapped up instantly. It wasn't a loud bark. It wasn't aggressive or scared. It was controlled, a short, sharp sound. The kind the dog made only when he wanted her attention. She stepped forward slightly. "What's wrong?" she whispered. The dog didn't move except to angle his head a tiny bit toward the bag. The girl understood. He could smell something stronger now, something that made him more certain. The guard saw the change too. "Is that another signal?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, it means he's sure, completely." The older officer's face tightened. "All right. Everyone needs to stay back," he said firmly. He raised his radio again. "Control, this is urgent." The dog confirmed the alert. "We need the team right now." People further back started to notice the tone of the officer's voice. Conversations paused. A mother held her child a little tighter. A man who had been tying his shoes stood up slowly. "Is everything okay?" someone called out. The officer replied calmly, "Everything is under control. Please stay where you are." The girl admired how steady he sounded. She wished she could sound like that. More minutes passed. They felt long, too long. The girl didn't move her eyes from the dog. She could tell he was focused, but she also knew he was tired. His breathing was steady, but she knew him well. He wanted to move, but he wouldn't until she gave him permission. "Hold on," she whispered, though he couldn't hear her. Finally, a small electric cart rolled up the path, moving quickly but quietly. Two uniformed response officers stepped off. One carried a slim case, the other held a radio and wore protective gloves. They approached the first guard. "What's the situation?" He pointed. "Dog came with this girl. She says he's trained." He signaled twice at that backpack. The response officer looked at the girl. "Is that true?" She nodded. "Yes, he found something. I don't know exactly what, but he's never wrong. Not when he sits like that." The officer didn't doubt her. Maybe he could see the seriousness in her eyes. Maybe he recognized the behavior of a trained dog. Either way, he turned toward the scene and immediately changed his posture into full attention. Everyone clear back another 10 feet. He called. People shuffled farther away. Some murmured nervously. "What's going on? Is something dangerous? Should we leave?" The girl listened quietly, wishing she could tell them the truth. But she knew she shouldn't. It wasn't her place. The officers moved a little closer to the dog, but still kept a careful distance. One of them crouched slowly and observed the dog's posture. "Look at that," he said under his breath. "That's a trained sit. No question." The other officer nodded. This kid wasn't lying. The girl's chest eased a little. They believed her. But the tension wasn't gone yet. Not even close. The officer with gloves looked at her. "Did you see anyone place the backpack there?" She shook her head. "No, it was already there when we came by." "Anyone sitting near it?" "Just people passing." "No one who seemed to own it?" He nodded. "You did the right thing telling the guard." She didn't know how to respond, so she just lowered her eyes. Then the second officer called over. "She needs to stand farther back." The guard gently guided her away. She didn't argue. She walked backward, keeping her eyes on the dog. Even from a distance, she could see his chest rising and falling slowly. She whispered softly, "You're doing great. Just a little longer." The dog blinked once, but didn't break concentration. The officer with the slim case placed it carefully on the ground and opened it. Inside were tools and devices she had seen once before when her mother explained them to her. She watched with quiet focus as the officer pulled out a long, thin pole with a small hook at the end. "Stay back," he warned everyone. "I'm going to get a closer look." The park had grown almost silent now. Even the children sensed that something unusual was happening. A few birds chirped in the distance, but otherwise, the air felt still. The officer extended the pole slowly, step by cautious step. The girl held her breath, though she knew he knew what he was doing. The dog didn't move at all, even as the pole came near the bag. The moment the hook gently touched the strap, the dog's ears twitched. The girl gasped softly. "Wait," the officer froze. "What is it?" She swallowed. He heard something, or smelled something again. The officer studied the dog closely. "He's still locked in, but he's alert." The girl nodded. "He wants you to be careful." The officer slowly pulled the hook back. "All right. We wait for the specialist." The guard beside her sighed with relief. "Good call." The girl didn't feel relief yet. Not until they were done. People behind her started whispering louder. "What's happening? Should we leave the park? Is it safe?" The officers called out, "Everyone stay calm. Please remain where you are. We have everything under control." And one officer added quietly, "We need to close the park entrances." Her mother would surely be here any second. She must have heard the calls on her radio by now. The thought gave her a small sense of comfort. Finally, she saw a familiar figure running along the path, quick steps, focused eyes. A uniform she recognized. Her heart jumped. Her mother, the woman, hurried toward the officers, her expression tense but steady. She looked first at the dog, then at her daughter. "You're all right?" she asked quickly. The girl nodded, but her voice wavered. "He found something." He sat down right away. Her mother knelt and cupped her face gently. "You did everything right. I'm proud of you." Those words made something warm rise in the girl's chest. She didn't smile. She was still too worried. But she felt a little lighter. Her mother stood and approached the officers. "I'm his handler," she explained. "Tell me everything so far," one officer briefed her, pointing at the backpack and the dog. The mother listened carefully, her jaw tightening slightly. "He won't move until I tell him," she said quietly. "Should we pull him back?" an officer asked. "No, not yet. If he moves too early, we could miss important signs." The girl watched as her mother stepped forward slowly, speaking softly to the dog. The animal didn't move, but flicked his eyes toward her. "You're doing great," she whispered to him. "I'm here now." The girl felt tears prick behind her eyes. Not from fear, but from the mix of relief and worry that had been building inside her. Her mother signaled to the officers. "Once the specialist arrives, we'll decide how to handle the bag. Until then, keep everyone calm." The officers nodded. The girl closed her eyes for a moment and took a long, slow breath. It had been such a normal day, just a simple visit to the park. Now everything felt heavy and serious. She wasn't sure how much time had passed, but she knew this wasn't over. She looked at the dog again, her brave, tiny partner. He hadn't moved for over 20 minutes. Her mother stood beside him like a steady guardian. And somewhere deep inside, the girl realized something important. Sometimes the smallest signals mean everything, and sometimes the smallest. Heroes carry the greatest weight. The park had become strangely quiet after the dog's sudden reaction. A few people still didn't understand what was happening, but most of them could sense that something wasn't right. The little girl, who had been so calm the entire time, now stood stiff. Her eyes locked on the dog that had gone completely still near the mysterious backpack. Even the dog's tail, which had been wagging happily moments before, no longer moved. The girl took a slow breath. Her hands trembled just a little, but she controlled it well. This wasn't the first time she had seen the dog act like this, but she knew that every time it did, something serious was going on. She looked around for an officer, her heart racing as she realized the closest one wasn't paying attention. People were still chatting, laughing, and walking around with no idea of what the dog had detected. She took a few careful steps toward the nearest officer, who stood by a small snack cart talking to the vendor. She tugged at his sleeve gently. He looked down with a friendly smile, clearly thinking she wanted to ask for directions or tell him something small. He had no idea that her next words were going to change everything happening around them. "Sir, I need to tell you something important," she said softly. Trying to keep her voice steady, the officer crouched down a little to hear her better. "What's wrong? Did someone lose their puppy?" he asked, glancing at the dog without any concern. She shook her head. Her fingers tightened around the small card hanging from a string around her neck. She lifted it slowly so he could see it. The officer's smile faded the moment he spotted the official-looking badge. "He's not a regular dog," she said. "He's trained to detect dangerous things. And he just signaled something near that bench. We have to move people away. Now." For a moment, the officer didn't react. It was as if his mind needed a second to put the pieces together. A small child standing calmly. A badge that looked far too real to be a toy. A dog acting in a way no normal pet would act. Then it clicked. His eyes widened, and his posture changed instantly. "Stay right here," he said firmly, his voice suddenly serious. He stood up tall and looked around, scanning the area until he saw another officer near the fountain. He gestured sharply, calling him over. The second officer jogged toward them, confused at first, but that confusion faded as soon as the first officer whispered something to him. The little girl stayed put, just like she had been taught. If the dog detected something, she was never supposed to run, scream, or panic. Instead, she had to stay calm, speak clearly, and follow the training her mother had drilled into her. For months, people nearby began noticing the sudden shift in the officers' behavior. The officers weren't shouting or creating chaos, but the tension in their movements was clear. One of them started quietly guiding families away from the bench. He smiled politely, making it look like a normal safety precaution. "Let's move to the playground for a little while," he said gently to a group of parents. "Just a quick check, nothing to worry about." Most people didn't question it. They simply took their children's hands and moved away. But a few curious bystanders started filming on their phones, thinking something interesting was happening. The girl tried not to look at them. Her focus stayed on the dog. She raised her hand slightly and gave a small but clear signal. The dog immediately responded, lowering itself fully to the ground with its nose pointing toward the backpack. The girl swallowed nervously. That movement confirmed what she already knew. The dog wasn't unsure or confused. It had made a full alert. Her heart beat faster. She remembered her mother's words clearly. If he lies down like that, it means there is no doubt. Stay calm. Follow the steps. Trust him. One of the officers returned to her side. "Are you sure about the signal?" he asked gently, trying not to frighten her. She nodded. "I'm sure. He only does that when he's certain." The officer exhaled slowly. "All right. You did the right thing." More officers arrived, but they stayed quiet, moving with purpose and trying not to alarm the crowd. They whispered into radios, forming a soft barrier around the area. A few kept their eyes on the backpack, while another continued guiding people farther away. The girl noticed the officers, glancing at her with a mix of gratitude and surprise. Most of them hadn't expected a child to know what to do in a moment like this. They didn't know her story, or the long hours she had spent learning from her mother while the dog trained beside them. One officer knelt beside her again. "Where is your guardian? Can we call them?" "My mom is working nearby," she replied softly. "She'll understand what's happening if you call her." He nodded and spoke into his radio. Within seconds, someone answered with urgency in their voice, confirming that her mother was already on her way. The girl kept her eyes on the dog. Even with officers all around, she felt safer when she focused on him. The dog didn't move, not even a little. His training was strong, and he trusted her just as much as she trusted him. A soft breeze passed through the park, making the leaves rustle gently. The normal sounds of children laughing and people talking had faded into the background. Everything felt strangely still. Then she heard footsteps approaching, fast, heavy, familiar footsteps. Her mother arrived, stepping quickly but carefully, her face full of concern and focus. She didn't run toward the backpack. She ran toward her daughter first. "Are you okay?" her mother asked, crouching to her height. The girl nodded. He gave the alert, the full one. Her mother's expression tightened, but she didn't show fear. She placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "You did everything right. I'm proud of you." The officers nearby stepped aside respectfully as her mother walked toward the dog. She looked at the way he was lying, the direction of his nose, the stillness of his body. All of it told her the same thing her daughter had already said. It was real. It was serious. She turned back to the officers. "Start clearing the area completely," she instructed calmly. Quietly, but quickly. They obeyed without hesitation. The girl watched as her mother spoke into her radio, calling for a specialized team to check the backpack. Her mother's voice was steady, controlled, and confident. She wasn't loud, but she carried authority in every word. The girl felt a mix of pride and fear. She had seen her mother handle situations like this before, but it was different when she was the one who had given the first warning. The dog still hadn't moved, and the girl whispered softly, "Good boy. I'm right here." Even from a distance, he seemed to understand. People continued to move away slowly, guided by officers who kept their voices light and calm. No one wanted to create panic, especially with children still nearby. The girl took a small step back as her mother returned to her side. "Let them handle the rest," her mother whispered. "You've already done the hardest part." But even as they moved farther away from the bench, the girl kept looking back at the dog who had started it. All the dog everyone had thought was just a cute, friendly pet. Only she and her mother knew how important he truly was. And now, the entire park was beginning to understand as well. The park felt heavier than before, as if everyone could sense that something important was happening even if they didn't fully understand why. People had been moved to a safe distance. Children held close by their parents, and most of the family stood whispering quietly. They didn't know all the details. The mood told them enough. This was not a normal day. The little girl stood beside her mother, watching the officers create a larger barrier around the bench. Her hands were still a bit shaky, but she tried to hide it. Her mother gently rested a hand on her shoulder, both to comfort and to steady her. "Just breathe," her mother whispered softly. "You've done everything perfectly." The girl nodded, though her eyes remained fixed on the dog. He still lay on the ground, completely frozen in his working position, nose pointed toward the backpack. Even from far away, it was clear he wasn't moving until he was told to. It always amazed the girl how he could switch from a playful companion to a sharp, focused worker in seconds. More officers arrived with specialized equipment. Their uniforms looked different, and the way they moved showed they were highly trained. They didn't shout or rush. They acted with careful purpose. They examined the area from a distance before slowly moving closer. The girl watched as they used tools she didn't recognize. Some looked like long poles. Others looked like small machines with wheels. Everything they used kept them far enough away to stay safe. There was no panic, no chaos, just calm, steady work. One of the specialists approached the mother and spoke quietly. The girl couldn't hear what they said, but the mother nodded, her face serious but calm. After the specialist walked away, the mother crouched down to her daughter's level. "They're checking everything carefully," she said. "You did exactly what you were trained to do. I'm proud of you, and he's proud of you too." She nodded toward the dog. The girl's chest tightened with emotion. "I just didn't want anyone to get hurt," she said softly. Her mother smiled gently. "And because of you, they won't." While the specialists continued examining the backpack, a few nearby families watched the girl with a mixture of surprise and admiration. They had seen her come into the park earlier, small and quiet, holding the dog's leash. No one had thought much of it. To them, she had simply been another child enjoying the day. Now they realized she had done something few adults could manage, staying calm in a moment of fear. One mother from the crowd whispered to her friend, "I can't believe she stayed so steady. My kids would have panicked right away." Her friend nodded, still holding her own child tightly. A little boy standing nearby tugged at his father's hand. "Dad, is she a hero?" he asked. The father smiled. "Yes," he said quietly. "She really is." The girl didn't hear their words, but she could feel people watching her. It made her a little nervous, but she tried to focus on her mother's calm presence beside her. After what felt like a long time, one of the specialists approached the officers and spoke in a low voice. The officers nodded with relief, and the tension in the air seemed to ease. The specialist then walked toward the girl and her mother. Her mother straightened up, listening carefully. "You were right to act quickly," the specialist said. "There were dangerous materials inside. It could have been very bad if someone opened the backpack or if it was left unnoticed. But thanks to your dog, and thanks to her, we got to it in time." The specialist looked at the girl with warm, respectful eyes. "Good job," he said gently. The girl felt her face warm a little, but she nodded politely. She didn't feel like a hero. She had just followed what her mother had taught her. Still, hearing those words made her heart feel full. Her mother placed a hand on her back and smiled proudly. "See? I told you. You did exactly what you needed to do." The dog finally stood up when one of the specialists walked over and gave the all-clear signal. His ears perked, and he stretched his legs before trotting toward the girl. She knelt down and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his soft fur. "You did amazing," she whispered to him. "I'm so proud of you." The dog's tail wagged gently, as if he understood every word, as the formal investigation wrapped up. One of the officers asked the mother and her daughter to step aside for a moment. "We'd like to make a short report," he said politely. "It won't take long. We just need to understand what happened from your perspective." The mother nodded and guided her daughter to sit with her on a nearby bench. The dog sat at their feet, alert but relaxed. The officer held a small notebook. "Can you tell me when your dog first noticed something?" he asked. The girl explained everything in simple, steady words. She told him how the dog sniffed around the bench, how he ignored food distractions, how he began checking one spot again and again. She explained how she recognized the signals, the way he sat first, then lay flat. The officer listened carefully, taking notes. "And you stayed calm the entire time?" he asked. She shrugged a little. "I tried. My mom always says that if I get scared, the dog will get scared too. So I just remembered what she taught me." The officer smiled. "That shows maturity way beyond your age." He closed his notebook. "Thank you. You helped us keep everyone safe today." As they finished, people started coming by, wanting to thank the girl and her mother. They didn't crowd them too closely. Officers made sure of that, but a few families wanted to say a simple, kind word. "We're grateful for what you did," one woman said. "Thank you for being brave," father added. "Your dog is incredible, and you're just as impressive." The girl felt shy under all the attention, but she managed a polite smile each time. She wasn't used to so many people looking at her. The dog sat tall beside her, accepting pats on his head from the approved people with a calm, almost proud expression. One officer walked over holding a small bottle of water for the dog. "He deserves this," the officer said with a grin. The dog happily lapped it up, and the girl giggled softly. It felt good to hear laughter again after such a tense afternoon. Once everything was settled, the mother turned to her daughter. "Ready to head home?" she asked. The girl nodded. "Can we get him a treat on the way?" she asked, looking down at the dog. Her mother chuckled. After today, he deserves 10 treats. She reached out and gently ruffled the dog's head as they walked away from the park. The girl couldn't help but glance back at the area where everything had happened. The benches looked normal again. Children were slowly returning to the playground. People were relaxing once more as officers removed the last of the caution. Tape, it almost looked like nothing had happened at all, but she knew better. And so did her mother. And so did the dog, who kept walking proudly by her side. When they reached the sidewalk, her mother spoke softly. You know, what happened today will stay with people for a long time. Not because they were scared, but because they saw something special. They saw a brave child who stayed calm and helped protect everyone around her. The girl looked up at her mother. Do you really think they'll remember? Her mother nodded. Absolutely, the girl smiled. A quiet, warm smile that came from deep inside. She didn't need praise or attention. Knowing she helped was enough. As they continued walking, the dog nudged her hand with his nose. She laughed and reached down to pat him. The real hero, she whispered. But the truth was clear too. Everyone who had been there that day. The hero wasn't just the dog, it was also the little girl who understood him, trusted him, and acted at the perfect moment. A moment that changed everything. And as the sun dipped lower in the sky, the three of them walked home together, relieved and quietly proud of what they had done.